Jack Miller stood at the viewport of the U.S. Discovery, watching the stars streak by as the ship moved through space. His reflection stared back at him, a man in his early 40s with a weathered face and alert eyes. He adjusted his simple leather belt, a habit from his Marine days. "Mr. Miller, we need to review the diplomatic protocols again." Alan Wright's voice came from behind him. The diplomat was a thin man who believed words could solve everything. Jack turned around and nodded. "Sure thing." The small meeting room on the ship held just 3 people: Jack, Alan, and Dr. Susan Clark, a xenobiologist with bright eyes and a quick mind. Susan tapped on her tablet, bringing up images of the Zorax. "These are our new friends," she said, though her tone suggested caution rather than friendship. "First contact was made 3 weeks ago, when they approached our deep space monitoring station." Jack studied the aliens on the screen. They were tall creatures with gray-blue skin and what looked like natural armor plates. Their 4 eyes were positioned to give them a wide field of vision. "They requested this meeting specifically," Alan added. "They say they've been watching Earth for some time. And we're just giving them what they want." Jack asked. He had been added to the mission only 2 days ago, a last-minute addition that still puzzled him. Alan straightened his collar. "This is how diplomacy works, Mr. Miller. We meet, we talk, we establish relations. And my role is—" "What exactly?" Jack asked, though he had a pretty good idea. Susan looked up from her tablet. "Security consultant is your official title." Jack smiled without humor. "So I'm the muscle, just in case." "You're here because General Peters insisted," Alan said with a hint of annoyance. "He said something about your unique perspective being valuable." Jack knew what that meant. His final years in the Marines had been spent in a special operations unit that dealt with unexpected threats. He had been selected for his ability to assess dangerous situations and respond with minimal resources. "The meeting will take place on orbital platform Sigma," Susan continued. "It's neutral territory. The Zorax will bring 3 representatives, matching our number." Jack walked over to the display. "What do we know about their technology?" Susan pulled up new images showing Zorax ships. "They're significantly advanced. Their propulsion systems are at least a century ahead of ours. We've detected energy readings that suggest powerful weapons, though they haven't demonstrated them directly." "Convenient," Jack muttered. "This is why we need this meeting to go well," Alan stressed. "If they wanted to harm us, they could have done so already." Jack wasn't convinced. Sometimes you study something before you decide to squash it. The ship's intercom crackled. "We are approaching orbital platform Sigma. Diplomatic team, please prepare for arrival." The 3 of them gathered their materials. Jack carried nothing but wore his standard-issue uniform with his personal belt. Unlike Alan with his briefcase full of documents or Susan with her scientific equipment, Jack appeared empty-handed. As they walked toward the airlock, Susan fell in step beside Jack. "You don't seem thrilled about this mission." "I don't like walking into situations I can't fully assess," he replied. "These aliens reached out to us, set the meeting location, and determined the team size. We're playing by their rules. Sometimes that's necessary for first contact," she said. Jack adjusted his belt again, feeling the hidden compartments and mechanisms within it. To anyone looking, it was just an ordinary leather belt, but Jack never went anywhere unprepared. "We're about to meet an alien species for the first time," Susan said, excitement breaking through her professional demeanor. "Isn't that amazing?" Jack watched as the airlock began its cycle, preparing to let them onto the platform where the Zorax waited. "Amazing isn't the word I'd use," he said quietly. "Let's just hope they're as interested in talking as we are." The airlock doors slid open, revealing a long corridor leading to the meeting chamber where Earth's first official alien diplomatic contact awaited. The meeting chamber on orbital platform Sigma was large and cold. Jack, Susan, and Alan stood on one side of a round table. Jack scanned the room, noting all exits and potential cover spots. Old habits. The door on the opposite side slid open. 3 Zorax entered, In person, they were even more impressive than in the images. Each stood nearly 7 feet tall with broad shoulders covered in what looked like natural armor plates. They wore fitted suits with glowing parts that Jack guessed were both decorative and functional. Each alien carried visible weapons on their hips. Jack stepped slightly forward, positioning himself between his teammates and the aliens. The middle Zorax, with darker skin than the others, spoke first. Its voice came through a translator device on the table. "I am Commander Vexlor of the Zorax Exploration Fleet." The alien's 4 eyes moved over each human, lingering on Alan's formal attire and Susan's scientific equipment before dismissing Jack with barely a glance. Alan stepped forward. "I am Alan Wright, diplomatic representative of Earth. This is Dr. Susan Clark, our xenobiology expert, and Jack Miller, our security consultant." The Zorax made a sound that the translator didn't catch. It might have been amusement. "Your security consultant appears under-equipped," said Vexlor, all 4 eyes now examining Jack. "Our scans detect no weapons or defensive technology." Jack said nothing, keeping his face neutral. He knew what they saw. A human in a simple uniform with nothing but a leather belt. Nothing threatening. Nothing interesting. "We come in peace," Alan said. "Weapons would send the wrong message." The Zorax to Vexlor's right made a motion with its hand. A holographic display appeared above the table, showing detailed scans of the 3 humans. "Interesting biology," this alien said. "I am Science Officer Krell. Your species has many weaknesses in physical design. Minimal natural protection. No redundant organs. Fragile skeletal structure." Susan straightened up. "Our species has other strengths." "Yes," said Krell. "Your neural capacity is notable. This one," it pointed at Susan, "shows higher brain activity than the others. We would like to speak with this one." The 3rd Zorax had not spoken yet. It stood slightly back, watching Jack with what seemed like more interest than the others. Commander Vexlor gestured to the table. "Please, sit. We have much to discuss about your planet." They all took seats. Jack noticed how the aliens arranged themselves. Vexlor directly across from Alan, Krell facing Susan, and the silent one opposite Jack. "Tell us about Earth's defense systems," Vexlor said. Alan smiled diplomatically. "Perhaps we should start with cultural exchanges before discussing military matters." "Your species values protection," Vexlor said. "As do we. It is a natural starting point." Jack watched the silent Zorax. This one seemed different, more observant, more cautious. Susan spoke up. "We're more interested in learning about Zorax biology and culture. Your species represents our first contact with intelligent life beyond Earth." Krell leaned forward. "We have studied your species for some time. Your technology is primitive compared to ours." "In some ways," Jack said, speaking for the first time. All eyes turned to him. "But we're quick learners." The silent Zorax finally spoke. "This one understands." Its voice was lower than the others. Vexlor made a dismissive gesture. Security Chief Mrazek sees threats everywhere. Ignored him. Jack nodded slightly to Mrazek. He recognized a fellow soldier when he saw one. "We have brought samples of our technology to share," Vexlor continued, motioning to a case the aliens had brought with them. As Krell opened the case, Jack noticed how the aliens positioned themselves. They were spreading out, creating angles. Not the behavior of friendly diplomats. Jack's hand casually dropped to his belt, fingers brushing the worn leather. To anyone watching, it would look like a nervous habit. But Jack was checking that his belt's hidden mechanisms were ready. "This device," Krell said, lifting a small sphere, "allows us to understand the composition of any material." But Jack noticed how Mrazek's hand moved closer to his weapon, how Vexlor shifted to block the main exit. Something was wrong. The assessment wasn't going as the humans expected. Jack caught Susan's eye and gave a nearly imperceptible shake of his head. She frowned slightly, sensing his concern. The trap was about to spring, and only Jack seemed to notice. The meeting continued for another hour. Jack watched as Alan tried his best to steer the conversation toward peaceful topics. But the Zorax kept returning to questions about Earth's military, population centers, and resource distribution. Susan shared basic information about human biology, careful not to reveal too much. Jack said little, playing the role of the quiet bodyguard. He noticed how the aliens' 4 eyes would occasionally dart to the exits, to their weapons, then back to Alan and Susan. They barely looked at Jack. He was furniture to them. Unimportant. Perhaps we could take a short break, Alan suggested after answering yet another question about Earth's largest cities. Commander Vexler's mouth formed what might have been a smile. No need. We have almost completed our assessment. The word made Jack's skin crawl. Not meeting or discussion. Assessment. Assessment, Susan asked, catching it too. Vexler stood up suddenly. Yes, we have gathered sufficient data on your species. The atmosphere in the room changed instantly. The aliens' postures shifted from diplomatic to threatening. Razk, the security chief, moved his hand to his weapon. I don't understand, Alan said, rising slowly. We've only just begun our talks. Vexler made a sound that the translator converted as laughter. You misunderstand the purpose of this meeting. We did not come to talk. Krell pressed something on his wrist device. The doors to the chamber locked with an audible click. What is this? Alan demanded, his diplomatic tone faltering. Your species has resources we require, Vexler said flatly. We needed to assess your capabilities before beginning extraction operations. Susan stood now too. Extraction. You're talking about invasion. A simple matter of superior species claiming what they need, Krell explained, as if discussing the weather. Your planet has rare minerals essential to our expansion. Jack remained seated, watching. He counted 3 visible weapons among the aliens, noted the distance to the door, calculated angles and timing. We aren't defenseless, Alan said, trying to sound confident. Earth has military capabilities. Primitive weapons, Vexler interrupted. Your most advanced fighters would not penetrate our smallest shift shields. Rask finally spoke again. The assessment is complete. The humans offer minimal resistance value. Their warriors, he glanced dismissively at Jack, carry no significant weapons or protection. Jack kept his expression neutral, even as his right hand slowly moved to rest on his belt buckle. You two, Vexler pointed to Alan and Susan, will come with us as specimens. Your neural structures will be studied before the invasion begins. And me? Jack asked quietly. The aliens seemed almost surprised to hear him speak. Vexler waved a hand dismissively. You may remain here. You present no threat or value. Krell moved toward Susan, reaching for her arm. She pulled back. Don't touch me. Ellen stepped forward. This is an outrage. Earth will not. His words cut off as Mrazk pulled out his weapon and pointed it at Alan's chest. Silence. The room grew tense. Susan looked at Jack with fear in her eyes. Alan stood frozen, staring at the alien weapon. Take them, Vexler ordered. I will contact the mothership. As Krell grabbed Susan's arm and Razk kept his weapon trained on Alan, Vexler turned away to activate a communication device from his suit. The aliens had positioned themselves poorly. They had focused on Susan and Alan, the perceived threats. They had spread out, creating gaps in their defense. Most importantly, they had ignored Jack. Jack sat motionless, watching the scene unfold. To the aliens, he looked frightened, perhaps in shock. They didn't notice how his fingers had found the hidden catch on his belt buckle. They didn't see the subtle change in his posture as he prepared to move. Your planet will be ours within a lunar cycle, Vexler said into his communication device. The assessment confirms minimal defense capability. Begin the approach to the target system. Jack caught Susan's eye and gave her the smallest nod. Her eyes widened slightly as she understood his message. Be ready. The time for diplomacy was over. Vexilor continued speaking into his communication device. Prepare the holding cells for 2 human specimens. Their brain structure will provide valuable data. Jack waited. Timing would be everything. He needed all 3 aliens distracted at once. The invasion will proceed as planned, Vexilor continued. Their defenses are minimal compared to. The alien commander stopped mid-sentence. His communication device emitted a harsh, static sound. He tapped it, frowning. What is happening? He demanded. Krell checked his own device. Communication interference. Something is blocking our signal. All 4 of Mraz's eyes narrowed, focusing on Jack. It's him. But Jack was already moving. In one fluid motion, he pressed the hidden button on his belt buckle. A high-pitched whine filled the room as the signal jammer activated. The aliens' devices sparked and went dark. What is this? Vexilor shouted, his translator struggling to keep up. Jack was on his feet now. His right hand moved to another section of his belt, pressing a hidden catch. A thin, flexible blade slid out from what had appeared to be just a leather strap. Rask raised his weapon, but Jack was faster. With practiced precision, he threw the blade. It struck the alien's weapon, knocking it from his grasp. Get down, Jack shouted to Susan and Alan. They dropped to the floor as Krell pulled out his own weapon. Jack's fingers moved to yet another section of his belt. With a quick twist, a small object detached. He tossed it toward the ceiling. The object exploded in a blinding flash of light. The Zorax screamed, all 4 of their eyes especially sensitive to the burst. What is happening? Vexilor roared, temporarily blinded. Jack was already moving. Another section of his belt detached in his hand, unfurling into a thin, flexible shield. It looked like nothing more than a sheet of plastic, but when Rask recovered enough to lunge at Jack, the shield stopped the alien's powerful blow. Impossible, Rask growled. Our scans detected no weapons or technology. Jack smiled for the first time since entering the room. Maybe you should have scanned more carefully. With his free hand, Jack reached for his belt again. This time, a small cylinder came loose. He pointed it at Krell, who was aiming his weapon at Susan. Jack pressed a button on the cylinder. A pulse of energy shot out, striking Krell's weapon. The alien weapon sparked and went dead in his hand. Energy disruptor, Jack explained to the shocked aliens. Handy little thing. Vexilor, recovering from the flash, lunged toward Jack. What are you? Jack sidestepped the attack, using the alien's momentum to send him crashing into the wall. Just a human who comes prepared. Susan and Alan watched in amazement as Jack transformed from quiet bodyguard to skilled fighter. His ordinary-looking belt continued to yield devices and weapons that the aliens had completely missed in their scans. The belt, Krell said in disbelief. It contains technology we did not detect. Human technology, Jack confirmed. Designed to appear as simple leather and metal. He pulled another section free, and it expanded into what looked like a thin rope. This one's my favorite. With practiced ease, Jack swung the rope toward Mrask. When it touched the alien, it adhered to his armor and delivered a shock that sent the security chief to his knees. Your assessment was flawed, Jack told Vexilor, who was getting back to his feet. You assumed that visible weapons are the only kind that matter. The commander's eyes darted between Jack and the door. This changes nothing. Our fleet still comes. About that, Jack said, pulling free yet another device from his belt. This one expanded into what looked like a small keyboard. While your communication was active, I was able to trace the signal path to your ship. Fear showed in Vexilor's eyes for the first time. What have you done? Jack typed something on the small keyboard. A holographic display appeared, showing the Zorax mothership. Sent them a message of my own, Jack said, along with a little virus that should keep their weapon systems busy for a while. The aliens stared at Jack in disbelief. The human they had dismissed as unimportant had just neutralized 3 Zorax warriors and compromised their mothership. And his belt still wasn't empty. Vexillor regained his composure quickly. "You may have surprised us, human, but you are still outnumbered." Jack glanced at the 3 aliens. "Am I?" Krell lunged toward Susan, grabbing her arm. "Stop your attack, or the female dies." Jack didn't look worried. "Susan, now would be a good time." Susan smiled and pressed something in her pocket. Krell suddenly let go of her, his body shaking as electricity coursed through his suit. "What?" he gasped. "EMP device," Susan explained. "Disrupts your suit's systems. Jack gave it to me before we arrived." Alan, who had been cowering near the wall, now stood up. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small device of his own. "I have one too," he said, his diplomatic mask falling away. "We were never as defenseless as you thought." Jack nodded appreciatively at his teammates. Never send humans into unknown territory without backup plans. Vexillor looked between the 3 humans, his confusion turning to rage. This was a trap. "No," Jack corrected him. "This was preparation." "There's a difference." Mrask, the security chief, studied Jack with new interest. "You knew we were not here for peace." Jack shrugged. "I suspected. Peaceful species don't usually scan for weapons first and ask questions later." The security chief made a sound that might have been respect. "Your belt. Each section contains a different tool." "Custom design," Jack said, detaching another piece. This one expanded into what looked like a small sphere. "This one creates a smoke screen that's harmless to humans but irritates Zorax respiratory systems." He didn't activate it, but the threat was clear. Susan moved to Jack's side. "Your species isn't the first to underestimate humans because we lack natural armor or visible weapons. We evolved as persistence hunters," Alan added, finding courage now that the tables had turned. "We survived by outsmarting stronger creatures." Jack kept his focus on the aliens. "You thought our lack of visible weapons meant weakness, but humans learned long ago to hide our true capabilities." He pressed another section of his belt. A holographic display appeared, showing the space around the station. Several Earth ships were moving into position. "Those weren't there before," Vexillor said, eyes widening. "They were cloaked," Jack explained. "Another technology your scans missed. They've been following us the whole time." The aliens looked at each other, their confidence clearly shaken. "Your entire assessment was based on flawed data," Susan said. "You saw what we wanted you to see." Jack nodded. "Earth has been preparing for alien contact for decades. We hoped for peace, but planned for the alternative." Mrask looked at Jack with what seemed like growing respect. "Your belt. It is a warrior's tool." "It's a survival tool," Jack corrected. "Each component designed for a specific purpose, some defensive, some offensive, some for communication or analysis." He detached another piece, which expanded into what looked like a simple bracelet. He tossed it to Mrask, who caught it reflexively. The bracelet immediately tightened around the alien's wrist. A light on it turned green. "That's a restraint," Jack explained. "It'll release a mild sedative if you try anything aggressive." Vexillor hissed in anger. "You cannot stop an entire invasion fleet with belt tricks." Jack smiled again. "No, but I can make your fleet think twice." He pressed another button on his belt, and the holographic display changed to show the Zorax mothership. On the screen, the mothership's weapon systems were powering down. Several smaller ships were drifting, their engines offline. "That virus I mentioned," Jack said. "It's spreading through your fleet's systems right now. Non-destructive, but very effective at demonstrating our capabilities." Susan stepped forward. "Now should we try diplomacy again? Real diplomacy this time." The 3 aliens stared at the humans in shock. The primitive species they had dismissed had just neutralized their most advanced technology with what appeared to be a simple leather belt. "How?" Krell whispered, his scientific mind struggling to understand. Jack tapped his belt. Human ingenuity. Our greatest weapon has always been here. He tapped his temple. Not what we carry. Vexilor paced the room, his four eyes darting between the humans and the display showing his disabled fleet. This technology should not be possible for your species. Our intelligence indicated you were at least a century behind us. Your intelligence was wrong, Jack said simply. He reached for his belt again and removed what looked like a small metal square. He placed it on the table, and it projected a 3D map of the station. Let me tell you about humans, Jack continued, pointing to different sections of the map. For most of our history, we've been outmatched by predators faster and stronger than us. We survived by thinking ahead. Mrazk watched Jack carefully. Your belt. It is not standard equipment for human warriors, is it? Jack smiled. No, it's my own design. Every human soldier adapts their gear to their mission and style. Impossible, Krell muttered. The level of miniaturization alone would require centuries of advancement. Susan finished for him, or just decades of focused development. Ellen stepped forward. When we detected your ships approaching our solar system, we accelerated certain research programs. Jack nodded. We hoped for peaceful contact, but Earth has a saying, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. He touched another section of his belt. A small compartment opened, revealing what looked like tiny metal insects. Nanobots, Jack explained. They're already in your ship's systems, mapping and learning. Vexilor lunged forward suddenly, trying to grab Jack. But Jack was ready. Another section of his belt detached in his hand, expanding into a thin rod. He touched it to Vexilor's chest, and the alien commander froze in place. Temporary paralysis, Jack explained. He'll be fine in about 10 minutes. Krell backed away. You came ready for war. No, Jack corrected. We came ready for anything. There's a difference. Mrazk, still wearing the restraint bracelet, studied Jack with growing respect. In all our conquests, we have never encountered a species that hid their capabilities so effectively. Because you judge strength by what you can see, Susan said. Humans learned long ago that visible weapons invite challenge. Hidden ones provide advantage. Jack helped Vexilor into a chair as the paralysis began to wear off. Your entire assessment of Earth was based on what we showed you, our visible technology, our apparent defenses. You were deceiving us from the beginning, Krell accused. Ellen shook his head. Not deceiving, just not revealing everything. There's a difference in diplomatic terms. Jack touched the map projector again, and it showed Earth's solar system. These red dots are your scout ships that entered our system over the past year. We detected everyone. The aliens looked stunned. We tracked them, Jack continued, studied your scanning methods, then designed our responses accordingly. Susan pointed to the display. Your scans were looking for specific energy signatures, radiation patterns, weapon designs similar to your own. But human technology took a different path. We designed our defensive systems to appear primitive on your scans, Alan added, while developing others that would be invisible to your detection methods. Jack detached another piece of his belt. This one expanded into what looked like a simple data pad. This contains information about human history, about how we fought wars against ourselves for centuries, how our best innovations often came from having fewer resources than our opponents. He offered the pad to Mrazk, who hesitantly accepted it. Read it, Jack suggested. You'll see that humans have always been at our most dangerous when underestimated. Vexilor, now able to move his head, glared at Jack. One human with a clever belt cannot stop an invasion. Jack smiled. You're right, but millions of humans, each with their own unique skills and tools, protecting their home. That's a different story. He touched his belt one last time, and a new hologram appeared. It showed Earth, surrounded by a network of satellites and stations that hadn't been visible on any Zorak scan. This is just a glimpse of what your assessment missed, Jack said quietly. Still think invasion is a good idea. Hours later, Jack stood in the station's communication center. The three Zoracs sat across from him, no longer as enemies but as reluctant negotiators. Susan and Alan worked on establishing a secure channel back to Earth. "Your fleet has been released from the virus," Jack said, checking his datapad. "All systems restored except weapons. Those will remain offline until we reach an agreement." Vexlor, still angry but now cautious, glared at Jack. "You have made an enemy today." "No," Jack said calmly. "I've prevented us from becoming enemies." "There's a difference." Mrazk had spent the last hour reviewing the data Jack provided. The security chief looked up from the pad. "Your species has fought more wars against itself than all Zorax conflicts combined." "Not something we're proud of," Jack admitted, "but it taught us to be prepared." Krell, the science officer, pointed to Jack's belt. "That technology. It is beyond what we thought possible for humans." Jack shrugged. "Most of it was developed in the last 15 years, after we detected your first probes entering our solar system." The three aliens exchanged surprised looks. "You knew we were coming that long ago?" Vexlor asked. Susan joined the conversation. "We've been watching the stars for centuries, hoping to find others. When we finally detected you, we prepared for all possibilities." Alan added, "That's humanity's greatest strength. We adapt quickly when we need to." Jack detached a final piece from his belt, the last section. It was a simple data crystal that glowed with a soft blue light. "This contains our proposal," he said, placing it on the table. "A mutual defense agreement, trade relations, cultural exchange. Everything we hoped to discuss when we came here." Vexlor looked at the crystal with suspicion. "Why should we agree to anything? You have disabled our fleet." "Temporarily," Jack reminded him. "We could have destroyed it. We didn't." Mrazk nodded slowly. "He is right, Commander. Their technology could have eliminated our ships. They chose restraint." For the first time, Vexlor seemed uncertain. "You would still offer peace after our deception." "That's also something humans are good at," Susan said, "finding common ground after conflict." Jack gestured to the data crystal. "This offer stands for 30 Earth days. After that, we'll assume your intentions remain hostile." The commander picked up the crystal, examining it. "And if we refuse?" Jack's expression remained calm, but his eyes hardened. "Then you'll discover that what you've seen today is just a fraction of Earth's defensive capabilities." A tense silence filled the room. Finally, Mrazk spoke. "I have studied the human historical records," he said to Vexlor. "Their warriors have a concept called asymmetric warfare. They excel at defeating technologically superior forces." Krell reluctantly nodded. "Their ability to conceal advanced technology as primitive objects is concerning. How many other humans have devices like that belt?" "Enough," Jack said simply. Vexlor looked between his advisors and the humans. Slowly, his posture changed, becoming less aggressive and more thoughtful. "We will consider your proposal," he finally said. "A species with your adaptability might make a valuable ally rather than a conquered world." Jack nodded. "That's what we hoped you'd say." As the aliens prepared to return to their ship, Mrazk approached Jack one last time. "Your belt," the security chief said. "Is it standard issue for human warriors?" Jack smiled. "No. Every human soldier creates their own specialized equipment. My belt works for me. Others have their own methods." Mrazk's four eyes widened slightly. "So we might face millions of different defensive systems if we chose invasion." "Now you're understanding humanity," Jack said. When the aliens had departed, Susan turned to Jack. "Do you think they'll accept our terms?" Jack watched through the viewport as the Zorax shuttle returned to their mothership. The virus had been lifted, and the alien fleet was moving into a higher orbit, away from Earth. "They're smart," he said. "They just learned an important lesson about humans." "What's that?" Alan asked. Jack smiled, his hand resting on his now empty belt. Never judge a species by what they let you see. The mothership's engines flared, and it began moving out of Earth orbit. Not fleeing, but retreating to a respectful distance. The first real diplomatic talks between humans and aliens would begin tomorrow. And this time, both sides would come with newfound respect.